The Victorian era, spanning the reign of Queen Victoria from 1837 to 1901, was a time of immense social and technological change. This period saw the rise of the British Empire, the Industrial Revolution, and significant advancements in science and medicine. Yet, amidst all this progress, there was a profound and pervasive preoccupation with death that influenced nearly every aspect of Victorian life. It was also an era profoundly affected by death. The high mortality rates due to diseases like tuberculosis, cholera, and smallpox meant that death was a frequent visitor in Victorian homes. This constant presence of death created a culture that was deeply intertwined with mourning and remembrance. High mortality rates, particularly among children, cast a long shadow over Victorian society. The loss of a child was a common and devastating experience for many families. This frequent encounter with death led to the development of elaborate mourning customs and rituals that were strictly adhered to. This pervasive presence of death permeated every aspect of life, shaping cultural attitudes, social customs, and artistic expressions. Mourning attire, for instance, was a significant part of Victorian fashion. Widows were expected to wear black for an extended period, sometimes for the rest of their lives, as a sign of respect and remembrance. Death, far from being a taboo subject, was acknowledged, discussed, and even celebrated in unique ways. Deathbed scenes were often depicted in art and literature, emphasizing the importance of a good death, one that was peaceful and surrounded by loved ones. One of the most striking manifestations of the Victorian fascination with death was the rise of post-mortem photography. This practice, which involved photographing deceased individuals, might seem morbid or unsettling to modern sensibilities. However, it was a way for families to create a lasting memory of their loved ones, especially in an era when photography was still a relatively new and expensive technology. This practice, which involved photographing deceased individuals, might seem morbid or unsettling to modern sensibilities. However, in the context of Victorian society, it served as a poignant and meaningful way for families to cope with loss and preserve the memory of their loved ones. These photographs were often the only images families had of their deceased relatives, making them precious keepsakes. However, in the context of Victorian society, it served as a poignant and meaningful way for families to cope with loss and preserve the memory of their loved ones. The photographs were often carefully staged, with the deceased arranged to appear as if they were merely sleeping. This practice provided a sense of comfort and continuity, allowing families to feel that their loved ones were still with them in some way. The photograph above exemplifies the Victorian approach to death. The deceased matriarch, often the emotional core of the family, is positioned prominently in the portrait. This placement underscores her importance and the deep sense of loss felt by the family. The deceased matriarch, often the emotional core of the family, is positioned prominently in the portrait. Her presence in the photograph serves as a reminder of her role and influence within the family, even in death. Her appearance, carefully arranged to mimic a peaceful slumber, reflects the Victorian belief in a serene afterlife. This belief was rooted in the Christian faith, which promised eternal life and reunion with loved ones in heaven. The serene expression on the deceased's face was meant to convey a sense of peace and acceptance, providing comfort to the grieving family. This image, far from being macabre, served as a treasured memento, a tangible link to a beloved wife and mother. It was a way for the family to keep her memory alive and to honor her life and legacy. In a time when death was an ever-present reality, these photographs provided a sense of continuity and connection, bridging the gap between the living and the dead. Post-mortem photography emerged as a direct result of the invention of the daguerreotype in 1839. This early photographic technique, developed by Louis Daguerre, revolutionized the way people captured images. The daguerreotype process involved exposing a silver-coated copper plate to iodine vapor, creating a light-sensitive surface. When exposed to light, the plate would capture a detailed image, which was then developed using mercury vapor. This intricate process produced a unique, one-of-a-kind photograph that could not be replicated. This groundbreaking photographic process, though initially expensive and time-consuming, made portraiture accessible to a wider audience. Before the advent of the daguerreotype, only the wealthy could afford to have their likenesses captured through painted portraits. The daguerreotype democratized portraiture, allowing middle-class families to preserve their images for posterity. As the technology advanced and became more affordable, photographic studios began to flourish, offering a range of services to clients eager to have their portraits taken. The ability to capture a person's likeness with unprecedented accuracy held particular significance in an era marked by high mortality rates. During the Victorian era, diseases such as tuberculosis, cholera and influenza claimed countless lives, often at a young age. Families sought to preserve the memory of their loved ones through photography, creating lasting mementos that could be cherished for generations. These portraits served as a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of family bonds. For Victorians, death was not viewed as the end, but rather as a transition to another realm. The Victorian era was characterized by elaborate mourning customs and rituals, reflecting the deep emotional and spiritual significance of death. Mourning attire, typically black, was worn for extended periods, and funeral processions were grand affairs. These customs underscored the belief that the deceased continued to exist in a spiritual realm, maintaining a connection with the living. Post-mortem photographs therefore served as more than just portraits. They were seen as tangible connections to the afterlife. Families would often pose with their deceased loved ones, arranging them in lifelike positions to create a sense of continuity between life and death. These images were cherished as sacred keepsakes, providing comfort and solace to those left behind. The practice of post-mortem photography was a way to honor the deceased and keep their memory alive. The act of photographing the deceased was imbued with a sense of reverence and solemnity. Photographers approached their work with great care and sensitivity, understanding the emotional weight of their task. They would often collaborate closely with grieving families to ensure that the final image reflected the dignity and grace of the departed. This collaborative process helped to create a meaningful and respectful tribute to the deceased. It was believed that these images captured the essence of the departed soul, providing a lasting glimpse into the eternal. The careful composition and attention to detail in post-mortem photographs were intended to convey a sense of peace and serenity. Sentimental elements, such as jewelry or personal belongings, were often included in the portraits to further personalize the image and honor the individual's life. The portrait above highlights the artistry and sensitivity often employed in post-mortem photography. Photographers would use various techniques to enhance the visual appeal of the image, such as soft lighting, careful positioning of the body, and the inclusion of symbolic elements like flowers. These artistic choices were meant to create a beautiful and serene representation of the deceased, offering a sense of closure and peace to the grieving family. The photographer, far from simply documenting death, aimed to create a beautiful and serene image. This required a delicate balance of technical skill and emotional sensitivity. The goal was to produce a photograph that not only captured the physical likeness of the deceased, but also conveyed a sense of their spirit and personality. By doing so, photographers helped families to remember their loved ones in a positive and comforting light. The delicate positioning of the hands, the soft lighting, and the addition of floral arrangements all contribute to a sense of peace and tranquility. These elements were carefully chosen to enhance the overall composition of the photograph and to evoke a feeling of calm and serenity. The inclusion of flowers, in particular, symbolized the beauty and transience of life, serving as a poignant reminder of the cycle of life and death. Through these thoughtful and artistic choices, post-mortem photographs became cherished keepsakes that provided comfort and solace to grieving families. As photographic technology advanced throughout the Victorian era, the cost of producing portraits decreased, making post-mortem photography increasingly accessible to all levels of society. No longer the exclusive domain of the wealthy, the practice became commonplace among the working classes as well. This democratization of remembrance allowed families from all walks of life to possess a tangible reminder of their loved ones. The affordability of post-mortem photography also coincided with the rise of sentimentalism in Victorian culture. The emphasis on emotional bonds and the expression of feelings found a powerful outlet in these photographic mementos. Families cherished these images, displaying them prominently in their homes and sharing them with relatives and friends. The collection of portraits above illustrates the pervasiveness of post-mortem photography, particularly among families who had lost children. These images, often the only photographic record of a child's brief life, served as poignant reminders of lives cut short. They were treasured possessions, imbued with deep emotional significance. Section 4, A Last Farewell, the significance of post-mortem photographs for grieving families. The significance of post-mortem photographs for grieving families cannot be overstated. These images held profound emotional value, capturing the essence of a loved one in their final moments. In an era before widespread photojournalism, these images often served as the sole photographic record of a loved one. Families cherished these photographs as they were often the only visual memory they had. They provided a tangible link to the deceased, allowing families to hold on to their memory and cope with the pain of loss. The physical presence of the photograph offered a sense of closeness and continuity. The act of commissioning a post-mortem photograph was often an integral part of the mourning process itself. It was a ritual that helped families come to terms with their loss, providing a structured way to say goodbye. It allowed families to honor the deceased and to create a lasting tribute to their life. These photographs were often taken with great care, ensuring that the deceased was presented in a dignified and respectful manner. These photographs were not meant to be hidden away. They were displayed prominently in homes, serving as constant reminders of the departed and their enduring presence within the family circle. They were often placed in parlors or other central locations where family members could see them daily. The image above depicts a typical Victorian mourning parlor, a space dedicated to remembrance and grief. These rooms were carefully arranged to provide a comforting environment for the family to reflect and remember. The presence of post-mortem photographs within this setting highlights their central role in the mourning process. They were integral to the rituals of mourning, helping families to navigate their grief. These images, far from being morbid reminders of death, served as sources of comfort and solace for grieving families. They provided a way to keep the memory of the deceased alive, offering a sense of peace and continuity in the face of loss. Families would often gather around these photographs, sharing stories and memories of the deceased. This communal act of remembrance helped to strengthen family bonds and provided emotional support during difficult times. Even children were included in this process, as these photographs served as a gentle introduction to the concept of death and the importance of remembering loved ones. They were a way to teach younger generations about the family's history and the enduring impact of those who had passed away. In many ways, post-mortem photographs became a part of the family legacy, passed down through generations as cherished heirlooms. They were a testament to the love and respect that families had for their deceased members, ensuring that their memory would never be forgotten. Ultimately, these photographs provided a sense of closure and peace for grieving families. They were a way to honor the deceased, to remember their life, and to find comfort in the midst of sorrow. The significance of post-mortem photographs for grieving families is a poignant reminder of the enduring power of memory and the ways in which we seek to preserve the presence of those we have lost. Section 5. Presenting the deceased. Posing and preparation for the final portrait. The process of preparing the deceased for a post-mortem photograph was a meticulous one, often involving the skills of both an undertaker and a photographer. The goal was to present the deceased in a dignified and lifelike manner, often posing them as if they were merely sleeping. The deceased were typically dressed in their finest clothing, and great care was taken to arrange their hair and features. Children were often posed with toys or flowers, while adults might be depicted with books or other personal items. The photograph above illustrates the lengths to which families went to create a sense of peace and tranquility in post-mortem portraits. The young boy, posed as if asleep, is surrounded by symbols of innocence and purity. This image, far from being macabre, reflects the deep love and sorrow of a grieving family.